Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 11th lesson in our Macbeth GCSE revision series. This will be our final lesson on this because most of you are sitting this exam in the next week or two. And I feel like this is the last major bit of advice that I want to give on Macbeth before you sit the exam. So if you haven't seen any of these videos before, what we've been going through is characters, themes. Throughout, we've been doing a bit of context and talking about Jacobean England and Shakespeare and Divine Right of Kings and Chain of Being and all that good stuff. Done some model paragraphs and answers the whole way through. And a few of you have asked me some good questions, so I've given you some feedback on some of that. Oh, did not mean to go there. Actually, I'll pop it there anyway. So today's lesson, final lesson, I had a thought about what I wanted to do most usefully out of these options, and I actually came up with a bonus thing that's really more to do with Q&A, I suppose, than anything. So quite a few of my students have been asking me how best to revise, basically, what's the best revision strategy. And I've been going through that a lot in my lessons with my students lately. So I thought I would give you a really good drill today, revision sort of practice that you can do. And we'll go through one of the characters in Macbeth just as a guideline to that. But you could do this for any character or any theme or any setting or any relationship in any text that you're doing for your exam. So step one is the step that's on the screen right now. So what you would do is you would map out the characters and the themes or whatever things could come up in the exams. For most of you, it's characters and themes. So this is not a full list by any means. This is just an example. So on characters, you'll map out Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Macduff, Malcolm, Duncan. There's lots more that you could put in there that could come up. Themes, you'd put like supernatural, good versus evil, etc., etc. You'd put your themes. So you'd map out everything first. Then what you would do is you would challenge yourself. This is step two. Challenge yourself to write as many quotes as you can remember for that character or that theme. So for today, we're actually going to be looking at Duncan as a character, okay? So rather than me sitting here and typing out what I can remember, I just thought I'd give you an example. I would hope that most of you would be able to come up with at least three to five to maybe 10 quotes from your memory on any major character in the books that you're studying, the texts that you're studying. So here's a little list. Duncan quotes. So he says, "Valiant cousin, worthy gentleman." He says, "There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face." When he gets to Macbeth's castle, he says, "This castle hath a pleasant seat." Then Macbeth, when he's talking about Duncan, says about how Duncan has borne his faculties so meek, and he's like a naked newborn babe. So there were two there from the soliloquy that I sort of remembered. And then finally, this is the end of this example, "Silver skin laced with his golden blood." So this is Macbeth describing Duncan's dead body after he's killed him. So there's a list of Duncan quotes from my memory, so to speak. So then once you've done a list of those, what you want to do is challenge yourself to sort of mine out some extra quotes as well. So what you do is you find an extract. So the easiest way with a character, obviously, is you just put in King Duncan Macbeth extract or something on Google, right? Or you go into the play and you just look at a section where Duncan is and where he speaks quite a bit. So that's what I did. So this is from Act 1, Scene 4. And you then read the extracts. This is the next step, step 3, and try and find some extra quotes and do a more close analysis. Now, the reason you want to do this particularly for 19th century novels and your Shakespeare plays, particularly those, is because in the exam, for almost all of the exam boards, you're given an extract to work with, right? So you're practicing doing a sort of close analysis of an extract like you will in the exam. And you're also picking quotes that you can then add and hopefully memorize for that character. And I'm going to give you a tip on how to memorize better as well. So Duncan says, "Welcome hither. I have begun to plant the..." Wait a minute. I knew that wasn't the start of the extract I picked. So Duncan says, "There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. He was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust." He's talking about the Thane of Cawdor who betrayed him before. And that first quote obviously wasn't in my list. What Duncan is saying with this quote is that there's no way of knowing what a person's motivations or thoughts are behind their face, right? So I can be here and I can be smiling and happy, right, on my face, when inside my head I might be like, I want to kill you, right? Like, you don't know what I'm thinking based on my face. That's what he's saying here. And it's quite ironic because then, literally a couple lines later, as Macbeth enters, he calls Macbeth worthiest cousin. And obviously, we know as the audience that Macbeth is considering killing Duncan. He hasn't decided yet, but he's considering. And obviously, we know, spoiler alert, if you don't know this a few days before the exam, I'm a bit worried for you, but obviously Macbeth does kill Duncan, right? Now, the other thing, as you're doing the extracts, this is kind of step 3, linking into another step, perhaps step 4, is try and think of how the quotes from the extract might link to quotes that you already have memorized. So when Duncan calls Macbeth worthiest cousin, that links to earlier in Act 1, Scene 2, when Duncan is speaking to the captain, and the captain speaks of Macbeth's bravery, and Duncan calls Macbeth valiant cousin, worthy gentleman. So we see that Duncan uses lots of positive language towards Macbeth. He calls him valiant cousin, worthy gentleman, and worthiest cousin. So he's using lots of superlatives, right? So this shows just how much Duncan loves Macbeth. The sin of my ingratitude, even now, was heavy on me. Thou art so far before that swiftest wing of recompense is slow to overtake thee. Would thou hadst less deserved, that the proportion both of thanks and payment might have been mine. Only I have left to say, more is thy due than more than all can pay. So we have this little repetition of more at the end here. You've got the rhyming couplet of say and pay. Basically, Duncan is showing how grateful he is to Macbeth here. He's saying that he can't reward Macbeth enough to thank him enough for what Macbeth has done, which is obviously to defend but Duncan mostly from the attacks on Scotland, right? So again, this quote might actually link to that same one, valiant cousin, worthy gentleman, I think. Or it might link to another quote later on in this bit. So, I've skipped out Macbeth says some things. We don't really need to worry about what he says when we're focused on Duncan. So I'll just skip to this next bit. Duncan says, welcome hither, I have begun to plant thee and I will labour to make thee full of growing. So he uses a metaphor here and he says to Macbeth, I, King Duncan, King of Scotland, the most powerful man in Scotland, will plant you and labour to make you grow. So he's using this metaphor of Macbeth being like a plant or something, right? And Duncan is saying, look, I'm going to look after you. Now imagine that someone said that to you that was very powerful. Let's just say that the Queen of England comes to your door right now, knocks on the door, says, hey, whoever you are, there's lots of people going to watch this. I personally am going to help you succeed in your life. Now, do you think that the help of the Queen of England would be positive or negative? Obviously, really positive. She's a millionaire, billionaire, all the contacts in the world. She could help you get into any business you wanted, any career you wanted, get you phone calls and conversations with anyone you wanted, right? So the fact that Duncan says to Macbeth here, I will labour to make you grow, it shows how generous Duncan is. And it also kind of adds to the tragedy of the fact that Macbeth chooses to kill him, because obviously Duncan here is saying, I'll give you everything. You can't be king, but I'll give you everything else. You could be as successful as you want in my country under my kingship, right? So very generous. Let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart. So he's talking to Banquo now, and he gives Banquo a big hug. Now that shows Duncan as a very approachable, warm king. It's not usual for a king or queen to be seen in those human terms. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't imagine Queen Elizabeth II hugging people very much. I think because there's this distance between the monarchy and the rest of us, really. So he's shown, though, Duncan is shown to be this really kind, warm, generous king. And then finally, Duncan says, my plenteous joys, wanton in fullness, seek to hide themselves in drops of sorrow. So he's saying he's so overwhelmed with happiness that he's literally tearing up, crying. So it shows that he's this very emotional person, like he's this very emotional guy. And he isn't afraid to show his emotions as leader, which is good. Sons, kinsmen, thanes, and all those whose places are nearest, know we will establish our state upon our eldest Malcolm, whom we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland. So here Duncan names his eldest son, Malcolm, the Prince of Cumberland, which means he'll be the next king. So this is called the law of primogeniture. So that's a context point for you. Which honor must not unaccompanied invest him only. Signs of nobleness like stars shall shine on all deservers. From hence to Inverness and bind us further to you. So he uses a simile now. He says, look, if you are noble, if you show signs of nobleness, if you do good things, then I will shine like a star on you. I will reward you. I will give you what you deserve. So now we see that Duncan is also presented as the embodiment of the chain of being, right? So Duncan has the divine right of kings. So that's the Jacobean belief that God puts the king on the throne or the queen. But he's also the embodiment of the chain of being, because at the beginning of this extract, we see that he has killed the Thane of Cawdor for treason. So he's punishing bad behavior. And now at the ending, he's saying, look, if you're good, I will give you rewards like you deserve. And we've seen that he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk, because he's already given Macbeth a new title as Thane of Cawdor, right? So he's the embodiment of the chain of being, because he's literally punishing bad and rewarding good. And that also then, final thought on Duncan, is that presents Duncan as the antithesis, the opposite of Macbeth, right, as a king. So that's step sort of 3 and 4. Let me just check my steps. Step 1, map out the characters and themes. Step 2, pick character or theme that you want to look into. Step 3, write as many quotes as you can. Don't worry if you don't get the quotes perfectly, by the way, like just get it as best you can, and you can always check whether you've got something wrong. Step 4, find or create an extract for the character. Step 5, pick quotes and make links between the quotes in the extract and the quotes in the text as a whole. So that's kind of what we just were doing. And then finally, step 6, you want to create a list of points for the character or theme. So with Duncan, a few quotes that we've got out of doing this little revision drill, I think, is he's presented as very kind and relatable and likable, really. These could all be different. You could actually make that into 3 paragraphs, really. Presented as kind, you have quotes, relatable, you have quotes, likable, you have quotes. He's presented as just and the embodiment of the chain of being. He's also presented as highly generous to his thanes, particularly Macbeth. That's just 3. There's more that we could get from this session, but there's 3. So with kind and relatable, you could look at, let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart. So the fact he hugs Banquo, the fact that he says, I owe you more than I can pay to Macbeth, that also shows his generosity, I suppose. Yeah, so there's several quotes. Then presented as the embodiment of the chain of being. I already sort of mentioned this, but you could do signs of nobleness like stars shall shine on all deservers. You could also do about he was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust, and you could talk about how Duncan had the Thane of Cawdor killed, so he's just. Presented as highly generous. My favourite quote for that would be, I have begun to plant thee and will labour to make thee full of, pardon me, full of growing. Yeah, I think that's a really good quote for that. But there are several other quotes that you could do for that as well. You could talk about worthiest, valiant cousin, worthy gentleman. In fact, he's generous with his compliments. Or the castle hath a pleasant seat. The fact that the castle that Macbeth has under Duncan's reign is really pleasant and good. That's also ironic, isn't it? Because obviously Duncan is complimenting the place where he's about to die. The generosity also even goes into the description of his dead body. The fact his skin is silver, or described as silver skin. This idea that his very skin and life was precious and generous. Golden blood. It seems like he even oozes gold and precious metals from his very blood, metaphorically, obviously. I'm not saying that Duncan literally bled gold. That would be pretty awkward. So yeah, so that's the way that you go through revision as far as I'm concerned. You go through mapping out the characters, picking the character or theme you want to go through, writing down as many quotes as you can from memory, then going through an extract and trying to pick out more for them, come up with some points and links between the quotes you got in the extract and the quotes you generally have. And that way you're going into the exam with a set of ideas already of what you're looking for if Duncan comes up. So straight away, as soon as you get into the exam, you can almost write down Duncan is kind, Duncan is the embodiment of the trainer being, Duncan is generous. You've got your 3 paragraphs then. So then you go into the extract and you just find bits that show Duncan as kind, Duncan is the embodiment of the trainer being, Duncan as generous. And then from the quotes from the extract, you also in your memory now have some quotes to link it to, because every paragraph, if you want to hit level 9, which I know you do, is going to be trying to get a quote from the extract and link it to a quote from the rest of the play. Okay, then you sprinkle in a nice bit of context at the end, and you've got a delicious, consumable paragraph for the examiner that they will very much enjoy eating or reading, actually. Anyway, so that's the end. That's all I wanted to say. Macbeth is wrapped up. If you haven't watched the videos previously that I've done, I highly recommend to do that. You've got a few days now, and that can make the difference between whatever level you're currently at and the next levels up. So yeah, good luck. Do your best. I feel like I've given you all the tools that you could possibly need over the last 10, 11 weeks. It's been fun. If you do like the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I will answer them and get back to you, even if it kills me before these exams. So yeah, good luck with it all and take care.